Welcome back. You're still watching and listening to the Keypoints. We're live on TV3, also live on 3 FM 92.7 and online at 3news.com. Also on our Facebook page, TV3 Ghana. So we're moving on next to look at the commemoration of the June 4th uprising. Yesterday was the 42nd anniversary of the June 4th uprising, and the peculiar thing about yesterday's celebration or commemoration is that it was done without the involvement of the late former President Jerry John Rawlings of blessed memory. We'll be taking a story about the commemoration yesterday, where we had the late President's daughter, Dr. Zanato, speaking at the occasion. We'll take a listen to some aspects of the things she said and return to our panelists. Let me quickly introduce our panelists. From my extreme left, we have with us Major Retired Boachi Jan. You all know him very much a forerunner when it comes to the June 4th uprising. In fact, he led the June 4th uprising. You're welcome, sir. It's good to have you.
Thank you.
And also Joseph Ni Laye Afote Agbo, former MP for Bon Kataman. So it's also good to have you, Honorable, and you're welcome to the show. So we'll take a listen to the story on the commemoration of June 4th yesterday, and where we had specifically Dr. Zanato making some remarks we'd like to listen to. So let's take a listen to that and come to our panelists in studio.
For the first time, the NDC celebrated the day without the founder, Jerry John Rawlings, following his demise last year. Chairman of the NDC, Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo, recalled some of the admonishment of the founder during the celebration of the day before his passing.
Because of COVID, last year we celebrated the June 4th at his residence, if my memory serves me right, and we did a virtual celebration. And he stressed on the need for us to keep the principles that necessitated the June 4th uprising. The house cleaning exercise, the quest for probity, accountability, the quest for social justice, the quest to ensure that issues about corruption and nepotism are dealt with head on.
Daughter of late President Jerry John Rawlings, Dr. Zanato Ajiman Rawlings, described the absence of his father as an indication that principles always stand the test of time.
I think it's a reminder that no one lives forever, but principles do. And the hope is that as we celebrate the 42nd anniversary of the June 4th uprising, it's to take cognizance of the situation, the circumstances that led to that, and to look in the mirror as a society in terms of government, in terms of individuals, members of the society, and re-examine what it is that we are doing, the situation as it is now. How does it resemble what was happening then? And advise ourselves accordingly.
She stressed current leaders must learn from the happenings that led to the June 4th uprising.
This day is meant to be a reminder of the circumstances that led to the uprising, and to remember to espouse those values and principles that help to maintain what we have. This is the longest lasting republic that we've had since independence, and it didn't happen by accident. We shouldn't take it for granted. We must value and respect the different rights and responsibilities that come with maintaining what we have going forward.
Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo said the call for government to fix the country reflects the reality on the ground. He added the difficulties citizens are currently going through could not be different from what led to the uprising in 1979.
If you look at our society today and you see the crippling of the factors that led to the uprising, then there is every indication for us to rise up and ask the government to sit up and fix the country, as well as try and ensure that good governance, social justice, accountability, transparency and probity becomes part and parcel of our governance architecture. Today, as we speak to you now, even free speech is being criminalized.
The June 4th revolution in 1979 rose out of a combination of corruption, bad governance, frustration among the general public, lack of discipline and discontent within the Ghanaian army at the time.
Right, so that was a report looking at the commemoration of the 42nd anniversary of the June 4th uprising, which happened yesterday. A number of speakers in the chairman of the National Democratic Congress and the daughter of the late President, Dr. Senator, in there. Let me start with you, Major. I know there's a lot to talk about, but unfortunately we don't have that much time. And we've had, this discussion about the June 4th uprising, May 15, 1979, and how it ties in with the June 4th, 1979 and all that. I've heard you in an interview say that May 15th, which is what the failed coup attempt by Jerry John Rawlings, which led to his detention and the subsequent release on the June 4th and all. You have indicated in an interview I listened to that May 15th came as a surprise because there was a certain bigger plan, which is the Free Africa movement.
That's right.
But that came as a surprise. But then when it happened, you took advantage and did what you had to do in respect of the 4th of June 1979 incident, because obviously you had to cover your backs, as it were. Let us understand the connection between the May 15th incident and then the June 4th incident. And if the statements you heard in the videos that we played from yesterday still resonate with you.
Yes. First of all, let me congratulate you for getting the terminology right. I normally squirmed when people talk about celebration of June 4th.
Right.
Because it isn't right to look at it that way. It was an act of war. People die on both sides of the equation, and you don't celebrate an act of war. It's commemoration, and I'm glad that you got it right. One of the few public figures who tend to get, even our own senator got it wrong. It's not a celebration. It's a commemoration.
Right.
I mean, forever the Queen and the royal household in Britain would solemnly take a wreath to the cenotaph and remember those people who laid their lives down for the First and Second World Wars and walk away quietly. That is what I crave could happen in the Ghana now. You see, but you are taking a lead. I think the campaign to commemorate it rather than celebrate it will take real roots if we look at it for what the essence of it. The roots of the so-called, well, not so-called, but reality of democracy now can be traced to June 4th. Because we probed, and arrived at conclusions and exerted the kind of punishment that you would think twice before you plunge the country into unconstitutional rule. So we should take it seriously. And my hope one day is that it will be a national event rather than a party event, because we acted for the whole nation. Democracy is not just for one party, it's for everybody. And that's why I feel elated that you've got it right.
Right. Now, you're saying you're hoping that it becomes some form of national event.
That's right.
Because you think it was done in the interest of the entire nation.
That's right.
But what would you say to people who raise the issue about what happened subsequently, i.e. 31st of December 1981, by the person who subsequently became the face of June 4th?
Yeah.
Because if indeed June 4th was to end coups, then you had the person who became the face of June 4th subsequently.
Right.
He himself going to overthrow another constitutionally elected.
What that position...
So how then does it become something that, we would want to celebrate, like you're saying, as a nation, given what happened subsequently?
Because you see, what you don't say is that he himself had to be driven out of that position of 31st December illegality by handing over himself to a democratic arrangement. That actually confirms the durability of June 4th as a principle, because at the end of the day, even if somebody were to come tomorrow to take over from the current regime, we would crave for the day to go back to democratic politics. So why do we have to throw the baby and the water out of the basket? So we need to begin to set up that the time has come for us to elevate June 4th to a level of national commemoration, like the Queen and the Prime Minister of Britain, for instance. I'm referring to it because I lived there for 20 years. I know what they do. They will troop quietly to the Senator, lay wreath in the memory of the soldiers who laid their life down so that the freedom of the world today can be traced to that. And I would like to look at June 4th, people Ghanaians to look at, especially the leadership, that it is the only legacy that is non-partisan in the context that we did not occupy a political space. We were not left-wing or right-wing or center or liberal. We just wanted institutional democracy to take roots. And that's the difference. And if we want to protect that the nourishment of that root there, then we must go back to the roots itself and hold it up so that, as a friend of mine was saying, the children will be asking questions and they will have the answers. But if we just allow it to become a partisan thing, that a few people will pick it up and that, then we have lost the essence of it. And that's not good for
very well. Honorable.
I think I want to add a little to what the old man said. Right. We shouldn't only look at Rawlings coming back in 81 after June 4. We should look at what happened and what were the issues. What pushed him to come back in 81 after
So you're saying that 81 was justified?
Yes, after 2 years of handing over. It must be a lesson to us. Those of us who have been very close to the revolution and have been very close to the former president, we have learned a lot, and we have a lot of things with us as to how we should be doing our things. That is why when you take over a regime, or when you get the mandate of the people, you don't have to look at yourself and look at how you are going to do things in your interest.
But shouldn't that be determined by the people who put you there, so that you don't come back to overthrow a constitutionally elected government, which you set out to end by the June 4th uprising? The coups to end all coups.
Took advantage of the feeling of the people, being maybe a very sensitive, emotional person who had enough time to interact with people on the street and find out what was happening, getting to know of their feeling and the situation on the ground. He took advantage of it. And at the time he was walking and entering into Burma camp, he didn't plan with anybody. There were only 2 in number. And they entered into Burma camp without giving any soldier man any information or prior information as to his intention and what they wanted to do. But his appearance within the barracks at 5 p.m. and Reki, when they saw him, he told them of his intention of coming in. And they embraced it, all of them.
But that's just the militaries, not the entire citizenry.
I'm talking about, after getting to know of the feeling of the civilians, getting enough time to interact with them at various locations. Because within a period of 2 years, he wasn't sitting at one place. He was moving out and visiting communities and interacting with the youth and everybody. He had the time to do it. So he got to know of their feeling. And being an emotional, sensitive person and intelligent, he took advantage of it. And no one, he didn't get any much challenge of his action. And he went through. That is why we must learn as a country. Like Irahuna was saying, the ideals of June 4 must be embraced by every Ghanaian.
But how do you say that and yet justify 31st January?
What I'm saying is that I'm not saying what Jerry did was legal. I'm saying that he took advantage of the feeling of the people to do what he did.
But he's still justifying it.
Maybe I didn't use the correct word.
But I mean, no matter how you put it, you're still justifying it.
You see, you may think of the period being given for people to come out and say, this is what we want. What if things are happening and the people are impatient and they cannot wait because people are dying, people are suffering? Because it was the same people who said 4 years for a decision to be taken. And at the point, because of maybe the actions and inactions of some personalities, they think if there's a way out, They will not wait for the 4 years.
But surely it couldn't have been.
And you are talking about human institution. Human institution. Human institution. We must learn. We must learn as a nation. And we shouldn't just use, it's just the same people.
What exactly are you saying we should learn? What should we learn?
We should know that when we come out, just like we want to believe in 4-year mandate, waiting for the legal issues to be done as to processes of elections and whoever emerges and all that. We should also learn of standing by the procedures as to how things should be done. But when laws are being bent, when procedures and guidelines and things are being turned around, the people will look at it and take advantage that if you have set the pace, if you have taken the lead in not going by the law, but doing something against the law, then we will also go against the law.
Really?
It will help all of us. So what I'm saying is that we all have a lesson to take.
Very well.
And we must be very careful.
Major, you'd like to make a comment because I see you.
Yes, I take a fundamental disagreement from his position.
Right.
In the sense that
If you
even
please
in
speak
our
up a bit for me.
traditional societies have a saying, "Oman yekina sinienswa." Because if you make a mistake of asking people to put the country on your head, they will gladly do so. But when the things start going wrong, you look left and right, and they're all gone. And you sag on that. And that's why even our traditional societies were democratic in that sense. They believe in change as essence of life, essence of political life, essence of whatever. Therefore, the mechanism that is available for us to mobilize and organize that is something that we must respect and cherish.
Right. Now, let's interrogate it further before we come to look at the modern day issues here. And this to you, Major.
Yes.
One of the members of the AFRC,
Right.
is it, I think, Kwabena Bachamfo, yes, has, I mean, like, he's been quite categorical in his reactions or statements about the incidents back then, and raising issues about the executions of some of the 8.
That's right.
In his narration, he suggests that so the 8 were executed on the basis that they had done some wrong, which had been, they had been subjected to trials by the courts.
Yeah, People's Court.
Exactly, the People's Court, and then found guilty and then executed and all of that.
Right.
But he goes on to say that there were some, for instance, he mentions Utuka,
Yes.
for instance, who was not necessarily linked to the coups of 1966 and 72, but was found to have been executed. So definitely going contrary to what the AFRC had decided, i.e. that we're going after people who had overthrown constitutionally elected governments. He's been quite categorical in respect of this. What is your response to that?
I would say that he's got it all wrong in the context that, you see, even in the common criminal law, if a thief steals your book and you encourage the thief to give the book to you, you could be nailed for handling a stolen good. You understand? So we shouldn't make a mistake and think that somebody had to be necessarily involved in the actual coup making. What we did was assemble all those who have been involved in the execution and the management of the consequences of the coup, which was amounted to an illegal occupation of our country. So you couldn't be selective. Law is not selective. Unless, if you have to make it selective, then you throw it away. We didn't do anything wrong there, because we needed to set an example that, like in the civil life, if you handle a stolen good, you didn't steal the goods in the first place, but you could be nailed for managing a stolen good.
Complicity by reason of maybe standing aloof or...
Exactly, and encouraging it, so-called. So I think it's a very dangerous position to take, particularly by a man in uniform.
And he was part of the revolution?
He wasn't part of it. He was.
Banchafo wasn't part of it?
No. We brought him in later.
Yes, but he became a member of the FRC.
Wait. So he could not have actually understood the reasons for some of the decisions we took. Because he was brought in after the event. You see? So let's make that absolutely clear. He's an individual, he can express his view, but it cannot be made to cover us because he was not part of that decision-making process.
He says he came in on the 16th.
Yes.
After quite a number of things had been done. But Honorable, you keep on smiling when the decision come up. What's making you smile?
I have a lot more.
Sure, share that.
Because I was not part of them, but I had a privilege to be with the old man himself. And apart from the old man.
But he himself wasn't part of the 4th June
Exactly.
uprising because he was in detention.
And
yes.
I have some info from the old man, and I had some from those who even planned how to get him out of the jail and how they are entering into the GBC office and all that. I was bringing the people to tell him what exactly they planned when he was not around, when he was in confinement. You know? So the ideals of June 4, their motive, the plan of June 4, I'm saying must be embraced, just like the old man said. I had a privilege to interact with the U.S. ambassador, and he asked me of some of my woes and problems I've gone through for being a minister. And I told him of the mentality of Ghanaians. Because somebody forged my signature to sell my property. And I couldn't take any action against him. Because if I should do, I will have the whole country accusing me of using my position as a minister to deal with somebody. But they wouldn't find out what happened. So I would advise the U.S. ambassador and those of them, they have a major stake when it comes to taking Ghana to a level. We must have our teaming or direct our teaming students from the military and from the USS to do that service with the military. Those are the institutions that we can boast on with loyalty and being genuine and all that.
Some would also say that we've had our, hardships by reason of
for some of us,
that institution
for
as
some
well,
of us,
because our political history has been riddled with several coups.
The evil of everything is money. And if you wouldn't see money as everything, and that can be taken out of your body and your thinking as a Ghanaian, when you are doing things, you first look at the issue, the country, development, the comfort of the people, and money will be the last thing. Because we learned this from childhood. So it has been with us.
Very well.
When adults being changed to a different level or into a different situation, it becomes a problem than when you are dealing with people at that younger age.
Sure.
So
it's
the students, our teaching students, are in the future going to take up positions in this country. But there are so many of them who are very brilliant, but they need to stand by the ideals of June 4, so that they won't only look at money, but development of our country and the comfort of our people must be their priority.
Very well. Major.
Yes.
Events that unfolded subsequently to present day Ghana, you look at these things and then you look back to the day 4th June 1979. Do you ask yourself questions? I know you've said that it should be perhaps commemorated as a national event.
That's right, not celebrated.
Yes. Do you look back and ask questions? Could it have been done differently? Could we have achieved the purpose that we set out to achieve in a different way? My answer
is very simple.
If you could please speak up a bit.
Well, my answer here is very simple. We took our cue from the existing criminal code of 1960 and the subsequent constitutions that had been codified by it in it. And it says simply this, that if you took over, you remove an elected government anywhere without without respecting the rules of engagement that existed to do that, you have committed a high treasonable offense, and that if you were to be prosecuted and successfully, then you should suffer death by hanging, that kind of stuff. So that's why I looked at that, a few colleagues of mine, not me alone, and we generated the issue of principle for probity and accountability. That what is missing under military unconstitutional rule is that you don't have the opportunity to change things if they find out to be wrong, because change is an essence of life. Therefore, if I still believe that democratic arrangement is the best mechanism for giving out opportunity to examine and change things if necessary when they go wrong. Soldiers don't act that way. Our culture is not that way. You just act on orders. And it's a celebrated saying, principle of not subordinate officers not taking responsibility for the actions of orders issued by a superior order room, they call it. So if we don't have a mechanism to judge ongoing events and make the corrections, then we are in trouble. And it doesn't matter what the quality of the democratic mistakes of a democratic regime. If we don't have the means to get correction while they are serving, at least when they finish serving, we should have the mechanism to hold them to account. So the idea of saying that XY government is creating trouble for us, the soldiers must come in and do all that, that's not the issue. The issue is that do we have the opportunity to change what we don't like now? All right.
Which is what Honorable in his earlier submission was talking about, the 4 years and the time and everything.
Before the old man continues, let me say something.
Quickly, and then, yes.
For us to do all the things that he's talking about, so the things we learned out of the June 4 is the moment you are appointed into whatever position, be it a president, MP, minister, or whoever, you don't zero on relations. You don't zero on friends. You must see every Ghanaian as your own.
And is that what the man did, or his government did? There's no proof to that effect.
No proof to that effect.
So then,
I can talk much about, I think, the period that we've had within the fourth.
Because we're looking at a situation where the uprising comes in, the AFRC takes charge for about 3 months, hands over after the election to the man, and then boom, how many years later? Less than 3 years.
2 years.
Exactly, you come back.
2 years.
So when you're talking about all these things, you don't focus on friends and all of that, then it would seem as though you're suggesting that was what happened to necessitate the comeback. Then that isn't even appropriate, assuming that even happened. It wouldn't have been justified.
I don't even want to dive into that area, because there's a lot that I'm aware of and I know that I can't discuss over here.
Well, let's take
But I'm talking about how we should do our things.
Very well.